all the people are asking them this question. What do I have to buy for my next car? Do I have to remain on a diesel or gasoline like 20 years, or do I have to switch to an electric car?
I do drive an electric car myself, and I see the big difference in range in winter versus summertime.
On the first generation of electric car, you can decrease your range by 2. It's not acceptable. Now you have heat pump on your car, and then you are able to recover more than 25% of this lost range.
Maybe one story that is not strongly pushed enough by the OEMs is not the cost of the car, but the total cost of ownership.
The target is to be able to buy an electric car at the same cost than a conventional one.
We all remember the first batteries we had in our laptops, which were dying after 5 years of use, pushing this idea that batteries will die and then after 5 years your car will be unusable. But this is not the case, right?
No, it's not the case, and the OEM are even anticipating this, because people must know that on their car, the OEM is managing what we call the...
Behind every dashboard, every ADAS feature, every HMI, every EV battery lies a human story. I'm Stéphane Lagrelle, founder of the Storytelling Tribe, and you are listening to Automotive Storytelling, a podcast where we uncover the narratives that drive automotive innovation. In an industry that is impacting the lives of so many people around the world, it's the power of storytelling that ultimately connects technology to humans. Today, we are talking about electrification at scale. According to the International Energy Agency, in 2024, over 17 million electric cars were sold worldwide, and EVs passed the 20% share of global new car sales. Latest figures show that sales have exceeded 20 million in 2025, a 20% increase compared with 2024. To give you an idea of the acceleration, the additional 3.5 million electric cars sold in 2025 compared with the previous year is more than the total number of electric cars sold worldwide in 2020. According to Benchmark Mineral Intelligence, in Europe alone, around 4.3 million cars were registered in 2025, either battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. And China has gone even further. The Chinese EV market grew by 17% in 2025 compared with 2024, with BEVs increasing by 26% and PHEVs by 6% over the same period, totaling close to 13 million vehicles. My guest today has been living this shift from the inside long before it showed up in these numbers. Claudine, you are currently the Strategy and Communication VP for Valeo's Power Division, bringing over 20 years of dedicated experience in the automotive sector. Your journey began as an engineer at Johnson Controls, working on engine management systems before the division was acquired by Valeo in 2005. You played a key role in the electrification space, leading multiple projects to promote electric and hybrid vehicle activities. Since then, you have held key leadership positions at Valeo. You said recently, I am convinced that the electrification trend is irreversible. And we are extremely happy to welcome you in Automotive Storytelling to discuss exactly that. Claudine, bienvenue.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Stéphane.
Really super happy to have you here today. And I would like to start with a quick note for the listeners. Claudine and I are recording this conversation in mid-April. Right now, the landscape is dominated by the situation in the Middle East and a massive spike in petrol prices. By the time you listen to this, the headlines may have changed, but the structural lesson remains the same. Our reliance on fossil fuels makes us vulnerable to geopolitical shocks. And that is exactly why the transition to electric mobility is such a key topic I'm glad to discuss now. So with that being said, my first question to you, Claudine, would be, when someone at a family dinner asks, so what do you do at Valeo? How do you answer this in one sentence?
So it's not an easy question, because it's always the question when we are working in operational or industrial topics. So what I'm doing is, when I am in charge of strategy and communication for Valeo Power Division, I'm answering that I'm working on all what is linked to electrification. And electrification is all what is linked to electric motors, electronic to drive those electric motors, and all the thermal management around the car. So in fact, even if you have an autonomous car and so on, you will need each time to have an electric motor. So we are around the motor and the cabin comfort for the car.
Excellent. And do they understand this story immediately, or they are like, but what does that mean exactly?
No.
How do your relatives, let's say your friends and family say, oh, but what does that mean? How do you exactly impact the way I'm going to drive a car in the future?
In fact, they start to understand. I think it was more difficult some years ago when we really start, because when I start to work on electric car, it was in 2009. Because we relaunched a project which was called Hybrid, and I was in charge of this project management. The target was to relaunch the ecosystem at the French level on all electric vehicles. And I have a joke because my 2 kids were born during this period, so they are Ibrelec 1 and Ibrelec 2. Those are their surname for my kids. But so and at that time it was more difficult for them to understand, because we were really at the beginning. Even if electric cars are existing since the 90s. In fact, it is more recently when the people start to ask them what will be their next car. Because we are in a point where, the European Commission announced that they would like to ban the internal combustion engine, so diesel and gasoline engine in 2035. Finally, they come back a bit on this decision to reopen the door. However, all the people are asking them this question: what do I have to buy for my next car? Do I have to remain on a diesel or gasoline like 20 years because I'm used to use those cars, or do I have to switch to an electric car?
So you have kids who are born in 2009, so I guess they will be probably starting to drive, although if I look at my own kid, is 24 and he doesn't have a driving license yet. So Luca, if you hear me. But so for your kids, if they are starting to drive, I guess that driving an electric car is now a question, whereas, 20 years ago, that was not a question at all, right?
Yeah, clearly. And the question is clearly this one, because for driving license, you have the choice. You can start to learn on a standard car, conventional car with manual transmission, or you can switch to automatic transmission. Some years ago, in my history, like if I was really old, which is not the case, there is no question. We were learning on manual transmission because it represents most of the cars we will have to drive in our journey. But now, honestly, there is no more real sense, because the next car will be either hybrid or electric. And even on an hybrid, you have an automatic transmission. So honestly, learning to drive on a manual transmission now, I don't know, it's perhaps not useless, but honestly, for the next generation, automatic transmission will be
is a given, I would say.
Yeah.
So to finish on your personal journey, so you started in an era, I would say, where electric vehicles were, I wouldn't say fantasy, but at least they were not widespread as they are now, to a point where you are currently working for a Power Division, which is a big division within Valeo. How do you look at this journey, professionally speaking?
In fact, since I started to work within Johnson Controls in 2003, it was always, the ambition was to reduce CO2 emission or the pollutant emissions and so on. So finally, it's just a natural evolution to go to the full electric car, because in terms of efficiency, we are going on better solution. Because in terms of energy consumption, then we will reduce the energy consumption globally for the world. So in fact, for me, it's like, we change the technology. We go through, it was exhaust gas recirculation on gasoline engine to reduce the CO2 emission. Afterward, hybridation with the micro hybridation with the starter alternator, for example, and then the 48 volt. And now we are on the high voltage and we go up to the electric. So it's really something like a linear, and all those technologies are existing in parallel today, because it's just a step by step going to the technology which will be the more efficient for the car and the more efficient in terms of sustainability for the world and the driver.
And so in parallel of your own, I would say, progression within Valeo has been also obviously progressing in the whole electrification and so on. Could you tell us a little bit more how this, I would say, this progression has been within Valeo, and how important now the whole power division is for the company?
Yeah, in fact, we must come really to the past, because we have to understand that within Valeo, there is always people who were working on the really first electric car in the 90s, with the Saxo Electric and the Peugeot 106. I think at that time it was electric car. And the point is that initially it was on power electronics, so meaning the electronic to drive the electric motors and so on. So we really started early, but at that time it was really too early, because finally there is no real push to move to full electric car. And afterward, within Valeo, so as I already discussed regarding this in 2009, when we decided to relaunch this activity, because we understood that it will come. So at that time, we don't speak about ICE ban, we don't speak about any regulation push, but we understand that back to basics and back to physics, electric car is really the more efficient car for the planet. And if we want to reduce the carbon footprint globally, and the automotive industry is representing, I think it was 18% today of the CO2 emission worldwide. If we want to reduce this part of the automotive industry, we have to move to the electric car. And so the strategy of Valeo was really we developed hybridization solutions, but always to move to the full electric. And finally, in 2024, when we decided to create the Valeo Power Division, so Valeo Power Division is the merge of powertrain system and thermal system. So we decided to merge both entities in only one power division, because when we speak about electrification, now it's not only to make the car run with the electric motor, but on an electric car, you need also to manage perfectly all what is linked to thermal management. Because on a conventional car, on a gasoline engine, for example, you have the thermal engine. So you have some heat source to heat your cabin, for example, in winter. But on an electric car, you don't have anymore this heat source. Okay, you have the electric motor and so on, but you are not at the same level of heat losses, I would say. And so you need to perfectly understand and have the right competencies on this energy management in order to be the more efficient on your car, and how you preserve the cabin comfort of your passengers with a perfect performance of your electric car. So this is why we decided to merge those both entities, because now the team are working really together and we can develop the synergies. For example, on an electric car in winter, I think all the electric car driver who can listen to us will understand what I mean. On the first generation of electric car, when you were in winter and you want to put your heating system in your car, you can decrease your range by 2. So meaning that you have a range enhancement around 400 kilometer or 500 kilometer, and you are at -7 or -0 degree. You put your heating because you want to be a bit warm in your car, and then you see drastically your range decrease. It's not acceptable. It is not like that you will be able to sell your electric car. Because the people want to keep their comfort, at least a bit of comfort. Okay, they can have some big cold weather stuff, but it's not the right one. So we decided to merge both teams. And for example, now we develop heat pump. So when you have a home, you have heat pump to manage the energy at your home, and now you have heat pump on your car. And this heat pump is at the core. She will manage all the energy on your car, so electrical energy, mechanical energy, thermal energy, and then you are able to recover more than 25% of this lost range thanks to this heat pump. So that's
really interesting, because that's actually a question that I wanted to ask you, because I do drive an electric car myself, and I see the big difference in range in winter versus summertime. And sometimes it's just changing regions, right? If you are the northern part of France where it's very cold, and you drive to the southern part, and actually you see that the range is increasing. And that's something that is completely unnatural for anybody who has not been driving an electric car, right? So 2 questions for you. Number one, this creation of a new entity, would you say that it was to ease the communication and make your story stronger for your customers? That's one question. And two, the whole question of thermal management being integrated in one division, as you said, is it also to help the whole ecosystem, meaning not only the drivers, but also the dealers, the salespeople at the dealerships, the OEMs in their communication, to handle this thermal management question, I would say, better?
So regarding the first question, in fact, we have decided this new organization also because we have been able, thanks to this new organization, to be more close to our local team. In fact, Valeo is a worldwide company. So in addition to be able to communicate with our customers, so the OEM, in fact, the vehicle car brands, it was easier for them to understand, and we can propose some innovation to improve the efficiency of the car. And in addition to that, we have been able to put in place an organization where we are really local for local, meaning that we have teams in China to interface Chinese OEM. We have teams in Asia, in India to interface our Indian OEMs, in Europe for sure, in Americas also. So it was the two aspects, really the synergies between thermal and drive, and also the regional aspects, because I think it's also something really important when we speak about electrification, because we don't have the same speed in all regions.
Yeah.
And regarding the second question, I think it's a really important point, because if we want the people to buy electric car, we need to teach them what is an electric car. And in fact, the electric car is perhaps not answering to all the usage for all people. Okay, at least for the moment. So that's why I know that some OEMs have already started to teach their dealers how to teach their their customers, in fact, because afterward we are in B2B2C, meaning that business to business to customer. We need to, if we want to sell our technologies at Valeo to our customers, we need also to better understand the final customer needs. And this is exactly what we are doing when we are developing our innovation. In fact, the 4 drivers we are following, it's the cost, okay, because we know that the cost, and it's not only the cost for our customers, so the OEMs, it's also the cost for the end user. We know that we have to work on the cost, because today the electric car is too high cost versus the conventional one. Even if the gap is decreasing, we know that there is a gap, and people are not earning more money, so they need to have the car at the cheapest cost. The second one is the efficiency. So the efficiency is the reduction of the consumption of the car, either the electric consumption in electric car, but fuel consumption. Charging experience. And here you see that the charging experience is clearly something that is linked to the end user. So when we speak about charging experience, is how to provide the end user a seamless experience in terms of charging, either ultra fast charging, where the people will be able to charge in 5-10 minutes maximum in order to recover a correct range to go at the final destination point. Or we can provide also wireless charging. In this case, the car will just be charged when it is parked, and afterward the final user don't manage anything. It's just wireless, like your phone. You put your phone on your induction point. And the fourth driver is the sustainability. So sustainability is afterward it's more global. Okay, electric car will have a better, in terms of pollutant emission and so on, is for sure better than a conventional car. But afterward is how you repair your car, how you recycle, how you reuse, and how you are able to remanufacture the parts in order to increase the lifetime of your components. And if you increase your lifetime of your components, then you reduce the carbon footprint, because it's not the fast consumption. It's more reasonable consumption.
I have a lot of questions to ask you. It's hard to put them into the right order, but I'm going to start with one quick thing before we continue. If you are new here, I'm Stéphane Lagraelle, founder of the Storytelling Tribe. After 25 years in global automotive marketing, Harman Samsung, TomTom, Pioneer, I built my business around one truth. The best technology doesn't always win. The best story does. We help Tier 1 suppliers and automotive tech companies turn engineering complexity into narratives that win deals. If that's your world, let's connect on LinkedIn. Now, back to it. I'm a car enthusiast. Obviously, I've been, I think, in love with cars for as long as I can remember. And in traditional engines, I mean, we had some, how can I say this, some really anchor points as consumers, like the number of cylinders, 4-cylinder versus 6 versus 8 versus 12, or turbocharged or not turbocharged, or, diesel versus gasoline. And as far as electric motors are concerned, I think that the feeling for many people is like, it's all the same, right? And so, people are going to talk that this one has 1,000 horsepower and this one has less, but it sounds like it's all the same. And I would love to understand from a technology standpoint, have we seen already big changes in how the motors are done? Or do you think that there is still a massive opportunity to bring changes for those technologies?
For sure, electric cars seems more simple than a conventional one. And that's why there is a lot of new entrants on electric car, more than in conventional car. In fact, in terms of big numbers, I would say, as you said, there is the horsepower, the battery size, and afterward, whether your car is single wheel drive, I would say, so front wheel drive or rear wheel drive, or if it is a 4-wheel drive. So those are mainly the big differences. Afterwards, the technology is more transparent, I think, for the end user. However, even if it is transparent, there is different technologies. And if we speak about the electric motor, one of the big stakes, I would say, on the electric motor is, for example, the rare earths. So rare earths is something perhaps not really understandable, but you have to understand that an electric motor, most of the electric motor today, I would say more than 90% of the electric motor are based on synchronous permanent magnet motor. So meaning that you have magnet inside the electric motor with an electromagnetic field. And globally, it's thanks to this electromagnetic field that you will be able to manage your motor and to drive your car. And those rare earths are mainly extracted in China and and those magnets, it's mainly in China. Okay. So there is a real dependency, especially on the EV rare earths. So meaning the one which are more difficult to extract and so on and so on. I will not enter into the details, but there is a strong dependency on China regarding the rare earths. And in addition to that, those magnets and those rare earths, they have a really bad carbon footprint. Okay, so it's really bad in terms of CO2 emission, the extraction, and so on. The production of those magnets is really bad. This is just an example, but for example, there is several steps to improve the technology of the electric motor. First is to decrease the content in EV rare earths. So you keep a magnet, you keep some rare earths, but you are EV rare earths free. So meaning you don't have any more EV rare earths. So this is the first step. And when it's not possible to remove all the rare earths, then you can switch to another technology, which is a technology which is electrically excited, meaning that you remove those magnets by copper. So it's a copper winding. And then you will create your electromagnetic field with a current going through this copper winding. And then instead of having a magnet with an intrinsic electromagnetic field, then you create it. And so this is a new technology electric motor that we are working on within Valeo on this. And this technology is able to reduce by 40% the carbon footprint of the electric motor.
Wow.
So it's quite huge. It's not a totally new technology because on Renault and BMW, they are already using this technology. But the point is that until that time, this technology has not exactly the same efficiency than the permanent magnet, was a bit bigger size. And now the real challenge is to be able to demonstrate that we are able, with this technology, to achieve the same performance, the same cost, the same efficiency as the permanent magnet. And this is what we are working on.
So this is the collaboration you have done with Malo recently, right?
Exactly.
And so I've seen that you are talking about externally excited synchronous motor. So EASM, with inner brushless electrical excitation, IBEE. Yeah. How do you translate this into a story that sticks?
So to be clear, so electrically excited, that's what we discussed, is you have the stator. So the stator is the fixed part of the motor, and on the stator you have copper. Okay, so this is the part that you will drive with your electronics. So the inverter, this is the electronic to drive the motor, and you drive this stator in order to create an electromagnetic field. And then with the both electromagnetic field, the one from the permanent magnet and the one from the stator, you are able to make the electric motor turn, and then you turn your wheel and so on. Now, when we speak about electrically excited, we have said that, okay, we have always the stator with the winding, but on the rotor side, you don't have any more permanent magnet, you have copper, and then you need to supply energy and to supply current to this rotor to create your second electromagnetic field, I would say, in order to make and to manage both electromagnetic field to make the electric motor turn. And this is exactly what we are working with Valeo. The point is that to supply the rotor, normally you need what we called a system with brushes. So meaning that you have the rotor with the axis of the rotor, and you have a brush which is on the rotor, and the rotor is turning, and you supply like this the current. The point is that you need, this part is more or less 5 centimeters on the B side of the motor. So you need 5 centimeter packaging in addition in order to supply. And afterward, as it is a brush, you will have some wear of the brush. So it needs to be replaced during the lifetime of the car and so on. What is new with Valeo is that we are using their new technology, which is per induction. So you will supply per induction. So you have a system that you will put inside the rotor.
Yeah.
And the current will be supplied per induction. So it's exactly when you put your phone on an inductive charger, it's exactly the same. So you put this inside, so you don't have any more wears of the brush. You remove the 5 centimeter system that you have on your electric motor initially. And so you reduce the packaging, you improve your efficiency. And now we are able to be at the same level of cost, performance, efficiency than a permanent motor thanks to this system.
And so the impact is pretty clear on, you said 40% reduction on the
carbon footprint.
On the carbon footprint. I think the other impact is the supply chain, right? Because the idea is really to have less dependency on one region that's going to supply those things. And we might talk about the supply chain a little bit more in this episode. But I'm trying to think about a consumer. You know, I'm wondering whether a consumer would have a hard time to understand how this. Why should I care, essentially, right? So how do you work with the OEMs to transfer, I would say, the importance of this technology to the end user? Or do you think, well, at the end of the day, we have other things to do, right? And there are other topics that we should take care of before.
Today, it's not something that is really communicated to the end user, this technology. In fact, what is the real need of the end user is to have the maximum of range. Okay, so the electric range to be able to use his car in more or less every day in the year, even if we want to go in vacation and to make 600 kilometers. So I think the range is the most important. And afterwards, the charging. So really be able to charge in a rapid way in order to, it's the really two aspects. Because after, in terms of performance, drivability and so on, we know that electric cars are much better. In fact, you have a wheel acceleration. We speak about turbocharger, for example, at the beginning, but when you try an electric car, depending afterward on the calibration of the OEM, but honestly, it's really powerful. So the electric car are really powerful. So in terms of drivability, there is no real matter, I would say. So it's really the range and the fast charging, which is at stake.
Yeah, but when you are saying this, I'm thinking about Ferrari, for instance, who has been announcing the Luce recently. I mean, I don't think that people who buy a Ferrari, whatever the price is, will necessarily care about the range so much. So I guess that this is creating new challenges for some OEMs, at least, who have been really investing a lot in ICE engine and having their own technologies, whether it's the inline 6 for BMW, the 5-cylinder of Audi, or the 12 cylinders of Lamborghini and Ferrari. So, I'm wondering whether some OEMs might come to you and say, how can we have an electric motor that will give us some stories to tell that are somehow close to what we had with ICs? You know where I'm going?
Clearly understood. And for sure, in this case, the IB system, so the electric motor, because we are able to reduce the carbon footprint, for example, I think it's something really important for the end user in terms of sustainability, because there is a lot of discussion on is the electric car really so nice for the environment, for example? because there was discussion around the battery. There is discussion around how to reuse, recycle the electric car. Are we sure that we will be able to recycle all those materials which are on the electric car? I think it's something that is as of interest for the end user for sure. So afterwards, be able to communicate on a technology which is in the same ambition, I would say, which serves the same ambition than the global electric vehicle ambition, which is reduce the carbon footprint and globally be more friendly, more environmental friendly. I think it's something that is irreversible, I would say, for the end user. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to come back. You were talking about the cost.
Yeah.
I think maybe one story that is not strongly pushed enough by the OEMs is not the cost of the car, but the total cost of ownership, the TCO thing. Because again, I'm a personal user of an electric car. And what I see is that compared to an ICE car, there is the difference from how much you're going to pay to actually drive, right? Because and especially right now, we see the spike in cost for petrol, but also even before the crisis in Middle East, it was still less expensive generally to drive an electric car than to drive a gasoline car. And then there are the maintenance, right? Basically, the only thing you change in an electric car is, you put water to clean the windshield, but that's pretty much it. And I've seen an interesting statistics. It's not about personal cars, but it's about trucks. Because in China, the number of trucks, and we are talking about the large trucks really that transport goods, there is a company, a British research firm, BMI, who forecasts that in China, EV trucks could reach up to 60% of sales in 2026 because the TCO is about 10 to 26% less than diesel. So even if the purchase cost of an electric car, truck is much higher than the one of a diesel truck, the total cost can be a quarter or less, which is massive. Yeah. Do you think that this is, so two questions. Number one, do you think that this is a story that we need to tell in a stronger manner? And number two, what is the approach of Valeo in this commercial business?
So regarding the first question, in fact, it's interesting because when I started to work in product marketing, the TCO, total cost of ownership, was something that we were using as a tool in order to promote the electrification globally, and especially the electric vehicle, in order to showcase that, in fact, you will be able to have a better total cost of ownership globally everywhere in the world thanks to an electric car. And it was really linked to the battery pack costs, because in fact the battery pack is a big part of the cost of a car, and we were assessing that we should have a good total cost of ownership, or I think it was the same total cost of ownership was with a battery cost at I think $90 per kilowatt hour, and the same level of cost was at 50. And at that time we expect to need so it was 5 or 6 years ago. And at that time, we thought that we will need a change of battery technology to reach those level of battery pack cost. But what we see today is that the battery pack cost has decreased significantly and drastically. I'm totally convinced that the results that they announced in China regarding the total cost of ownership reduction thanks to an electric truck is valid because of those reduction of the cost. So globally, everything has reduced in terms of cost on the battery pack, but even on our solution within Valeo, onboard charger, power electronics, electric motor, and so on, we see, I would say in the past 5 years, a clear decrease, because we were able to work with our supplier, we were able to increase the volume. There is also the classical effect of the volume to reduce the cost. And clearly, even if it is something that we don't analyze strongly today, because finally we are now more on in fact, our target is even more than the total cost of ownership. We are targeting to have the same cost.
Okay.
The purchase cost. So this is the target today. So the target is to be able to buy an electric car at the same cost than a conventional one. So this is
which means that the TCO will be lower than a conventional car.
So the TCO will be lower than a conventional car because you have less maintenance, because the electricity. Okay, there is always people who will say that when you charge your car on a highway with fast charging, it's too high cost and so on. But more than 95% of the time we'll charge at home, and the cost of electricity is less than the cost of fuel. So clearly the total cost of ownership will be less. But what is interesting is that when you speak about truck business, it's not the same business case than on passenger car. On passenger car, you have fleet for sure, and you have particulars or end user who will buy their car, but it's more the purchasing cost who is important. So that's why we are targeting to have the purchasing cost. But when you speak about truck, the TCO is clearly something they are who drive their business.
Yep.
So in fact, it's valid for all our innovation. When we are working with truck players, we have some discussion and we have some product for truck business. You need to demonstrate that you will have a TCO, and normally you need to have a return on invest, I would say, within 1 year or 2 years maximum. So you need to have a better total cost of ownership, able to be at the same level of cost than a conventional solution in 1 or 2 years maximum. And it is clearly linked to their business. Because in the business of trucks, they have to amortize the on cost of their trucks, and they are working with this. So yeah, the truck business is totally.
And so to come back to my question, is this something that you are working on actively at Valeo, all the truck business?
Yeah, we are working more and more actively. So it's not a huge part yet of our business.
Yeah.
However, we are coming from the fact I would say conventional solution that we are providing strongly to the trucks are clutches, dampers. Okay, so transmission system, I would say. But now that we have developed a portfolio of solutions for passenger car in electrification, we are proposing those solutions to the truck makers. Because what we have to understand also is that the business model is not totally the same. When an OEM will develop new platforms and so on, so they will invest in a new platform to develop innovation and so on. In the truck business, they are more interested in off-the-shelf product, off-the-shelf solution, because they don't have the money to pay for development and so on. So that's why now that we have this portfolio, we are able to address the truck business. And for example, there will be an important event in the US, which is ACT. It is a congress like the auto show that we have for passenger car, but dedicated to truck business. And we will be there with a big booth for Valeo to promote all our solutions, either for the Power Division or our other division, Brain and Light Division also. We are now able, thanks to this portfolio, to better address this truck business and to provide and to promote our solution to those actors.
Another question is about software. Obviously, we talk a lot about SDV and so on. I guess that this can be quite of a difference between ICE engine and EV engine is the importance and the impact of software. Can you tell us more about that?
A lot of people make the link between the software-defined vehicle and the autonomous driving. Okay, because in terms of autonomous driving, you need for sure cameras, lidars, and so on, and you will have a lot of software to manage all those data and to be able to make the vehicle react correctly to the different situation and so on. But in fact, in the electric car, you have also software everywhere. Because you have software to control the motor, you have software to control the charge of your car, you have software to control the battery, how is it managed, you have software to control the cabin comfort, and so you have software everywhere. And we have the same evolution in terms of SDV. And when we speak about SDV, is because it is strongly linked with the evolution of the electric and electronic architecture of the car. When you have a gasoline engine, I would say, so you have also sensors, some actuators, and so on. You have injectors in your combustion chamber, and so on. And you have more or less one electronic control unit. So it's an engine control unit, and you have a vehicle control unit. Okay, and and afterward you have all what is linked to the entertainment, I would say, inside the car. But when you speak about an electric car, then you have an electric motor, and afterward, all the rest, more or less, is electronic. Okay, so you have some actuators and so on, but all the rest is electronic. And afterward, the question is how to rationalize, I would say, those electronics on your car. Because you can keep electronic everywhere, Or you can have, in order to, afterward, it's always a question of cost, of efficiency, cost of your architecture, and so on. Afterward, there is an evolution towards, in order to embed more and more electronics in the same packaging. Because if you are able to have all your electronics in the same packaging, then you have less material for your packaging. And you can share, for example, microcontroller. So you will buy only one microcontroller with a bit more computing power, but it will be always cheaper than to have 5 microcontroller different one. And for example, we see this trend a lot in China, where they put on an electric motor up to, I think the maximum was 13. They call this the 13-in-1, meaning that you have the electric motor, its transmission, okay? Afterward, you have, so the inverter, which is the electronic to drive the electric motor, the charger, you have the DC-DC converter, and you have up to, 12 electronic, also all the electronic to manage the thermal management of the car, are inside the same electronic. So we see this evolution in terms of SDV. And afterward, what I would like to add in addition to the SDV is the artificial intelligence, because afterward, when you have software everywhere, what is really an opportunity today is to use artificial intelligence in order to support this software development. And today, I think it's 25% of software coding in the automotive industry, which is done through AI. And in 2016, I think it was 0. So there is also a strong evolution linked to AI, which will help also. And it's a really important opportunity to move to this SDV architecture.
And so when we talk about SDV, we often talk about OTA. Do you see opportunities to for end user who buy an electric car today to see changes in the way that the car is going to behave from an electric motor perspective or maybe thermal perspective thanks to OTA technology?
OTA, there is several possibility with OTA. First one is the maintenance. Thanks to OTA, you will be able to upgrade your car. So if you detect an issue on your car and so on, and it's always already the case for the electric car like Tesla and so on, they are able to, as it is done on your phone finally, you have the same principle than your mobile phone. You will have some upgrades, regular upgrades, where they will be able to fix some bugs or some update of your software and so on. And in addition to that, they will be able to provide you some additional features. So for example, some additional functions on your car. So you have a car, you have a basic car, and for example, there is some, and we are working on this also, there is some OEM who will be able, you can subscribe to I don't know, €5 per month or something, and you will be able to have a more powerful car. So meaning that your car was, I don't know, at 250 horsepower. And thanks to this additional subscription, through OTA, they will be able to upgrade you to 300 horsepower, for example. Afterward, you can have also, I think it's, you have also something more or less similar regarding the heating of your cabin. You know, the seat on your seats in your cabin, you can heat your seats when it's in winter. And in fact, it's something that you can also give access through OTA, for example.
Indeed. I mean, features that can be added through OTA is something that is already widely happening. But I was more thinking about indeed whether you can improve the efficiency of a motor. Or is it really fixed by the hardware? There are hardware limits on what you can do, or do you see software as a tool to improve the efficiency of a motor?
There is a part which is fixed by hardware. Okay, so electric motor and so on. But afterward, it's the way how you will drive your electric motor. You will be able to potentially improve in the inverter through the OTA. So afterward, in terms of efficiency, this is possible. But globally, normally, you are asked by the OEM to be at the peak efficiency from the beginning and from the start of production of the car. So this is the request. But clearly, now we have some what we call maintenance contract with the OEM on the whole lifetime of the vehicle. And each time we are able to improve the software of our car. So in fact, we don't stop the software development at the start of production. We continue to develop the software afterwards, and each time we have an improvement and so on, the OEM will be able to give this improvement to the end user through OTA. So this is clearly something that In fact, the paradigm of the software development has clearly changed since with the arrival of the SDV, and this is something we are changing, and we have software team which are working even post start of production, when in the previous years, we were stopping at perhaps at SOP plus 6 months just to detect the early bugs. And afterward, SOP plus 6 months, you don't have anymore anyone working on the car. But now we have people who can be maintained up to 10 years or 15 years after the SOP, just to be able to upgrade and to in order for the end user to benefit from the latest software update that we are developing.
Maybe one very practical question for anybody who is listening and thinking about buying an electric car. Would you say that from a reliability standpoint, an electric car with the motor and the battery is more reliable than a traditional car, or it's pretty much the same? How would you see that?
From my point of view, it's more reliable than a conventional car. Because in fact, it's more simple in terms of construction, architecture, in terms of quantity of actuators or sensors that you have on the car. I speak about the propulsion and thermal management, mainly my perspective, my area of competencies, I would say. And as an example, there is some, I don't know if you know the company Tesla Loop in the US. It's a taxi company who operates Tesla cars. And I think they were able to achieve more than 1 million kilometers on cars. So those are cars which are operating 24 hours on 24 hours, 7 days a week with autonomous taxi and so on. And they have been able to achieve more than 1 million. Perhaps in the 30 years ago, we had some Mercedes who were able to achieve 1 million kilometers, but it was just really
rare.
Rare.
It was not the I would say the rule, right?
It was not the rule.
But because that was a big question by many people, because we all remember the first batteries we had in our laptops, which were dying after 5 years of use, and I think that it was also kind of either a misconception or maybe the lobbies from the petrol were pushing this idea that batteries will die and then after 5 years your car will be unusable. But this is not the case, right?
No, it's not the case. And even the OEM are even anticipating this, because people must know that on their car, the OEM is managing what we call the state of health of the battery. So it is SOH in addition, and the state of health, and they are able to control and to understand, thanks also to the OTA, they are able to know whether your car and your battery capacity, for example, is decreased or not versus when you buy your car. And it's exactly what Renault have done on the first Zoe. When they were leasing the battery pack, you buy your car, you buy your Zoe, but the battery was in leasing, because they were anticipating on those first generation of battery to be able to replace the battery in case the state of health was not good anymore. So the OEM are really managing this in order to provide to the end user the full performance of the battery pack. So in fact, it's something that is clearly managed. And we can see that now with the new generation of the battery pack, honestly, the improvements are huge. And for me, there is no any more reason to be afraid about this. We have to move from the range anxiety to just the opportunity to have an electric car, because it's more user friendly than a conventional one.
To close this incredible episode, let's talk a little bit about the future. So you guys have been working, as we have seen, on improving the motors and like having less rare earth in them. Would you say that what you're working on in the future is still on improving further the motors, or would you say that it's really on the thermal management that there is the biggest opportunities in the upcoming years?
For me, the biggest opportunity for the future is to take a step behind in order to be more as a energy management. Now you can improve the efficiency on one component, on the other one, but what is really important is to find the synergies and how you are able to manage globally the energy of your car. So, and those the three energy, electrical, mechanical, and thermal, like we said at the beginning. And for that, we are helped thanks to the SDV, for example, because we developed a software which is called Valeo Predict for Range, able to manage, thanks to the data coming from the weather, so the weather condition, your habits to drive, your GPS, where you want to go, and so on. The software will be able to improve your journey in your car and to improve the energy management. So it will be able to recover some energy from the electronics, for example, from the motor to heat the cabin. It will be able to precondition your car before you start your drive. Then you will not decrease your range.
It's really where AI, actually, we were talking about AI, but this is really where AI can have a big role, right?
Yeah.
Really gathering massive amount of data from all the ECUs in the car, all the sensors in the car.
Yeah.
And so trying to predict where they have to put the energy in the most efficient way, right?
And this is what we are trying to provide to our OEM in order to support them. And afterward, it's more like a co-innovation, I would say, with the OEM to work together in order to provide to the end user the most efficient car, but really globally. The global energy management will be something that is really important for the future.
Awesome. Well, my last question would be the question I ask to every guest, which is, what is your number one storytelling advice to our audience?
So my number one storytelling advice will be to remain agile, because in fact, along all my career, we changed in terms of technology. We changed. We worked differently with different regions and so on all over the world. And I think it's not my sentence. I think a lot of other people are using this. But the only thing which is constant is change.
Yeah.
And it's valid in the automotive industry. We come back to what you discussed regarding the geopolitical situation. It's the same. So we have to remain agile. We have to remain open, and we have to move from the fear of the anxiety, range anxiety, and so on, to all the opportunity opened by the electric car. For sure, people are afraid about the change, but I think it's a good change globally for us and for the environment. So we have to go.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Claudine. So I think it was really, really interesting to talk about how you guys are really thinking about the electric motor, not just as one part of the car, but how it has to be integrated into the whole vehicle, not only from an architecture standpoint, but also from a software standpoint. That was really enlightening. And thank you so much, Claudine, for your time and for answering all my questions. So with that, I will close this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Automotive Storytelling. Dear listeners, if you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe to our podcast wherever you get them from, and share it with friends and colleagues who are passionate about the future of automotive technology. Remember that behind every dashboard and every feature lies a human story, and those are the stories we are committed to uncovering here. Until next time, I'm Stéphane Lagrelle from the Storytelling Tribe. Thanks for listening.